Howdy, and welcome back to the Die Is podcast. I'm stealing the introduction this week. It's normally Alex's go, but I'm your host, Nick, and I'm joined tonight.
By me, I'm Alex. I just got fired from doing the intro.
And Justin's here as well.
Formerly known as Graybeard.
Yeah, I'm still pretty gray.
Yeah, the rest isn't.
Doing the Just for Men.
Yeah. So, going into this, unless you wanted to continue leading.
Oh, go, please.
So, heading into this one, it's been a little while since we've had a chance to do a podcast, so I want to see what you guys are playing lately. Nick, if you want
to. Lately, I've been playing a mix of Skaven and Khorne. Not at the same time, but mix them up. Trying some various Khorne lists. I did a 3-rounder this past weekend with Khorne. Had a lot of fun with it. It was a very casual event, but it was a lot of fun. And what about you guys?
I have been playing Lumineth.
Have you been playing?
Well, I've been on and off playing. I've got like one game in since the last time we played. By on and off, I mean on once, off a lot.
Yeah.
I've been in this mode of like, hey, the Lumineth book is coming, so I want to get one more game in. And then like 3 weeks later, I'm like, the book is coming. I want to get one more game in.
You've had a lot more time than you expected.
By 2023.
Yeah, it's coming. What have you been up to?
I've been playing Big Wa, actually. Just trying like a lot of like non-Mega Boss on Mock Crusher builds. So I've been running 2 birds from Cruel Boys. I don't know. At times it seems okay. At times it's not the strongest of the builds, at least for my playstyle. But
pulling from
the birds are fun. Faction. I like. You know, they can move a lot. They have some casting. If you can get Choking Miss off, they're super good. But then sometimes it's just like, these models are so fragile.
Sure.
Like, they don't, like, 2 rend is, like, mediocre for a lot of armies, but, like, 2 rend against these birds is just really deadly.
Choose to roam.
So, yeah, I mean, you still get the pigs, you get the Wargog Stare, which I love.
Sure.
You get Ard Boys, which I think are, of the battle line, I think Galatian veterans have been hurt a lot by bounty hunters, which I'm sure we'll get into, but at least they got the 6-up on all their shields and stuff like that, and their saves of 4-up, so... And
they're cheap for what you get.
Yeah.
10 solid wounds that can be buffed well.
Yeah, so I wish they had a point of run. I mean, that's asking for a lot. But yeah, I've been having fun with it. I don't think that's where we're gonna be playing in a tournament in October, and I don't think I'll be bringing Big Wa. But there's a lot to come, which probably leads us into another discussion.
Well, so do you... Just before we do that, do you have an idea, like a solid... I'm not asking you for them.
No. I mean, I will definitely be playing Beasts of Chaos contingent on a couple things. So, I mean, we can probably get into this. So we have a 50-man tournament that takes place in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin.
Dragonfall.
Yep. It's run by Mark Ramchek and Ramchek. And I want to bring Beasts of Chaos. But there are some weird things going on again with the faction. So last week I was super happy. They FAQ'd my Zangor and Zangor Enlightened to say they were Beasts of Chaos still.
Right.
Because in the box set, the cards didn't have Beasts of Chaos keyworded. And then they immediately released the Tzeentch book now, 1 week later, which now takes precedence over the FAQ that came out 1 week ago. And on the War Scroll again, no reference to Beasts of Chaos.
Right, and because it's the most recent update, more recent than the FAQ, it trumps the FAQ. I'm sure Mark will clear this up and give them the keywords for you.
Common sense would dictate that they mean for these to be Beasts of Chaos, but rules as written...
Right.
It's one of those things that like somebody's going to say, you don't know if they changed their mind. They might have changed their mind.
In 5 minutes, they might have changed their mind. So that's what I want to play. I mean, so much could change based on what we're going to talk about. We think that the 3 months balance is going to happen soon.
Right. Yeah. Which could have a radical impact on the game.
So right now my list would be like 6 Enlightened on Disc, 6 Skyfires, because as we'll talk, I kind of like what they did with them in Tzeentch. Some Dragon Ogres, and I want to bring in Incarnate. So,
Sure.
But Incarnate could go up to 550, 600 points. You
Yeah,
never
who
know.
knows?
People
Yeah.
complain about it a lot. I don't think it's that bad of a model.
I think it's on the block though. When you
Oh,
look
yeah.
at things that you expect them to be looking at and making a change to, I think the Incarnate's right up there.
I still think the Purple Sun could use a little bit of work. We're
Mhm.
going to talk about the FAQ to
Yeah.
that. But yeah, that would be the list. What about, I mean, you're debating whether you're going to go.
I'm 50-50 on going to Dragonfall or not. If I was going, I would probably end up bringing Seraphon just because the Luminath book isn't out yet, and
Sure.
I'm sure by the time it's out, well, even if it went for pre-order this weekend, it would be just releasing the day of or the weekend of Dragonfall. Or
You'd be
whatever.
running the current book.
Yeah, or no, it'd be before the cutoff. The same with, we have a tournament in November that we're putting on that even if it released,
Well, I think we
pre-order,
could maybe
and
talk
then
to
that,
Sean about
and
this.
then
You're
that.
playing a game with him. Maybe you can talk him out
I
of
think
the
we
it
probably
would be
should, yeah.
it would be
maybe
outside
let's
of the
go
month.
maybe 2 weeks.
Well, we'll see what happens, but so I would probably end up playing Seraphon. It's a faction I'm super familiar with. And,
Sure. And super strong right now.
Yeah, they've
Still
always.
awesome.
It's been good ever since they got their second edition book.
Which was, we can date pretty much exactly, because it was
We
like
played a game. The first game me and you ever played.
St. Patty's Day of 2020.
Yeah, everybody was having a party in my living room, and we were in the back room playing.
So
playing
cool. I mean, that's when you
Warhammer.
know you're freaking cool.
Yeah, I think we had met once, and it's like, hey, we're gonna invite this guy over. He's twice our age, and we're gonna be in the back room while you guys are all drinking.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, I guess. So
And you were like, and people were kind of like hemming and hawing about the book at that point. Oh, I don't know. It seems okay.
yeah, you beat me that game.
Of course
I
I
think
did,
with
but- Iron Jaws.
Yeah.
Double Mega Boss.
Yeah, the book wasn't even out yet. I had like print offs of
Yeah.
the spoilers, but yeah, it was. God, that was a while.
So we're creeping on 3 years of that book being awesome.
Yeah, and it's been awesome the whole time.
Absolutely. And it's been awesome in a variety of ways the whole time. They've nerfed things and changed the edition, and things have rotated. But whatever is at the top at any given time, that Seraphon book is fantastic.
Yeah.
I would ask Nick what he's going to play for Dragonfall, but he literally sends me 2 lists every day asking me what I think about them, and I tell him, that's filthy. Well, that list is filthy too. This list is really good and filthy, so...
And every one of them's a completely different faction than the day before.
So all I'm going to say is, he's definitely bringing some filth,
Sure.
but what kind of filth?
It could be
we don't
almost
know
anything.
yet. Yeah.
I don't know. I've been going back and forth from a handful of different factions. I'm really excited about some potential Skaven. I'm really excited about Nighthaunt, and Nighthaunt is what I feel most comfortable playing right now. But I've been playing Khorne and really enjoying that. I've been playing Hedonites and kind of digging, exploring in that space. Although that would be some tough sledding, I think, at Dragonfall.
Yeah, they need a little more rend, right?
A little more rend, or just a little bit more punch across the board, I think, yeah.
But it'd be so much fun to just go to a tournament and it's like, this is going to be rough.
Right.
But if you... I mean, we know like a third of the people that are going to be there, so...
And every win means so much more when you're
Yeah.
kind of an underdog, right?
Yeah.
Well, what you just said about all these lists and the list that you talked about in the list, that talks about the general health of like the game we're playing right now. Like, other than like probably 3 armies, 2 armies, I think you can play any. I don't think crew boys are very good,
Sure.
and I think if you're gonna play anything but trolls style
Sure.
gets, you're gonna really struggle.
Yeah.
Gitz is definitely in a rough place.
Yeah.
Trolls are good. Trolls are solid.
Trolls just won a big tournament, like in
Sure.
I was talking to Dan from Missouri. He took second with Soapblight Gravelords, and he was saying that the first place list was the Trolls, and he sent me the list. It was cool.
There you go.
How many are they running? I don't have enough.
They
A ton,
ran
but I
like
could get enough.
the list was a Dankel Drug Boss, one of the one of the shamans that you can get the 4 up, and then just trolls, and then one of the Slagas. for the plus
The
one.
Marsh Crawler Slogga to really shore that up. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just a boatload of trolls, and it's funny, but they can do work.
Absolutely. So in a list like that, you probably get something like 21 trolls on the table.
No, he had like 27 trolls.
27 trolls.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it was crazy, but it was awesome. I mean, great.
Yeah.
So you can play some kind of kits that can do well.
Yeah,
It's-
something. How do you think? So they released the Metawatch article, and right before that they nerfed. I don't know if I want to call it a nerf or a change to the Purple Sun.
Sure.
I mean,
A
obviously
small
it's not.
tweak.
Yeah, they tweaked it. It's more of a balance than a nerf,
Mhm.
like an upright nerf, like Leagues of Votan just got.
Don't talk about that.
Oh yeah, sorry, before you get.
Yeah, that's not.
I really like how they did this. And this is something that I've been talking about kind of since the start of 3rd edition. It seems like they're more willing to make frequent updates. And when you're making frequent updates, you can make small updates.
Yeah.
Rather than having very, very slow updates and having to take a massive swing at things.
So what did they do? I mean, so they
They
decreased the range.
yeah, to 1 inch.
Right. For the instant slay, the rend reduction or the save reduction is still the
It's
same.
the same.
Which is maybe the strongest part of the model, although it was
Often.
pure just
Chaos when you
Chaos
would
with the
slay
ones,
something
yeah.
ridiculous. They changed it to where it can auto slay a model of 9 or less wounds,
Mhm.
and then
all of a sudden 10 wounds isn't the worst
10,
number of wounds
yeah.
in the game.
Yes,
You know,
it's got some upside.
10 or more, they would take 2d6 mortal wounds.
It's D6 plus 3. So a 10 wound model
or
dies.
is it D6 plus 6?
I think it
Or,
might be. Yeah.
You're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
D6 plus 6.
So,
So
10
a 10
wound
wound
model basically dies.
50% of the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they raised his points from 70 to 90.
Right.
So, and I mean, those are small tweaks, but that's small tweaks to a lot of parts of it,
Mhm.
which typically I would expect them to change like one variable and see how it goes. But I mean, I like the changes.
Yeah, I think these were all very appropriate changes. I think the points, we said in our last podcast that points changes are not enough for the model.
Yeah.
And I think this points change is probably it's still not getting the points where it needs to be. But with the rest of these changes, that really addresses the worst part of what this model is doing.
Yeah.
And then this kind of gets, so I've been really excited about an article that came out today.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a Metawatch article that came out, and if you haven't read it yet, it's on Warhammer Community. It's the Metawatch series has been decent,
Yep.
but then the best part about this is I think they're setting us up for the mid-season points and competitive adjustments,
The
right?
balance sheet. Yep.
Yeah.
So the one funny thing that came up in this is there's 3 points. They talk about external balance, internal balance, and universal options. So there's the point on universal options is they said that they want endless spells and the generic artifacts to be used around 10% of the time.
Sure.
Endless spells are amazing right now.
Right.
There are like
They're so
8 great ones right now, easily.
good. Yeah.
And then everybody loves Arcane Tome. It's
Right.
just by default you just find a way to get in your army right now.
There are so many books right now that don't have an artifact as good as Arcane Tome. Oftentimes, there are a lot of books when you go through the artifacts lists that will have an artifact or multiple artifacts that are effectively half of Arcane Tome.
Yeah.
And those are still viable artifacts, and Arcane Tome is just head and shoulders above them. So we see that so much, so consistently. I think it's interesting that that's kind of their target number, right? They put a mark on the field that they say they want Arcane Tome to be taken by about 10% of armies. That's a tough goal right now.
You just have to be in that 10% and then you're happy.
Right.
Do we think they follow through with that? Do we think there's
Well-
radical changes to what happens in this mid-season competitive balance that addresses endless spells in this? Because endless spells are relatively new.
I think Endless Spells, they've already taken the step on the one that was getting well above that 10%. I don't think there's a lot that are going above 20% of lists
Cogs
now.
being, I think, the
Cogs is probably
I-
at 15% of armies.
I do wonder, are they talking about the specific, so they don't want Purple Sun used in more than 10%. They don't want
Correct.
Cogs used in. They don't want endless spells used in. Or
Right.
generic
I think they're
endless
comfortable
spells.
with the idea that most armies are taking endless spells. What they don't want is most armies are taking Purple Sun.
Yeah.
Right.
But what is Arcane Tome? Like 50%?
Well, I think there's only really one way for them to address this on the Arcane Tome side. They can go through a bunch of books and provide them valuable artifact choices. That's not going to happen.
No.
Right.
That's
That's bigger than what this is going to be. They're going to nerf the Arcane Tome, right?
Yeah.
So you become a wizard that can cast Mystic Shield and
Right now, it grants 3 abilities. Right. It gives you a cast. It gives you the knowledge of 4 spells.
Yeah.
Right. Mystic Shield, Arcane Tome, Gaze of Gur, and a lore spell. And it gives you an Unbind. And I think what they'll probably do is get rid of that Unbind component.
I think they'll get rid of that you can know a lore spell.
Just do. You can only cast Arcane Bolt. It's Arcane Tome.
Or Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield and Gaze of Gur. I think I could easily see it being that. So you can't basically add a wizard that replaces a wizard in your army, but
Yeah.
And what if they say you can't attach an endless spell to that wizard?
Sure, or just say that it's not a wizard. Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of the 4th hidden ability that it gives. It does make the character a wizard, which lets you bring an endless spell in your roster. It has interactions in a lot of places with wizards. Although, if you do make them a wizard and then don't give them the restrictions that come with a wizard, then that can lead to some ugly things, right?
For sure.
They specifically call it Arcane Tome in the universal options, but what other universal options are in? I mean, Flaming
for
Weapon.
artifacts,
right?
Yeah, Flaming Weapon.
For artifacts, no, but Flaming Weapon, Mastery Magic, High Priest sees play in priest armies. The command traits for, typically when I build a Stormcast list, I'm looking at either High Priest or Master of Magic almost universally. There are some of those other enhancements that get a lot of play. None to the extent of Arcane Tome.
I don't think you have the option.
I think that's around 10% on those, probably. Maybe
less
than that,
probably.
Yeah. But a lot of people pair Flaming Weapon with Arcane Tome on a melee hero that's not a wizard or something like that.
So another interesting thing from the article is they brought up a couple of armies that they basically strongly implied are going to get positive adjustments.
Yeah, well, and this is related to the external balance part that you mentioned before, which is they want to maintain 45 to 55% win rates.
Is that the first time they've come out and clearly said that? I know a lot of people have talked about that being the magic spot.
I think they've talked about it a little bit, but I'm not sure that we've had it very explicitly stated like this. They talk about it in roundabout ways, like addressing things that are outside of this Goldilocks zone, but this very explicitly stated.
Yes, they have a graph with a good to go range and a nope and no.
I'm a little nervous because right now they have Beast of Chaos as the #1 army.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think
you mean the #1 army?
I want to say Beast of Chaos is small sample size. Now I clearly have skin in the game.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see heavy nerfs to Beast of Chaos just because they're sitting on
Fight for your faction real quick.
I think Beasts of Chaos, it is small sample size. It's got a very high barrier to entry.
Sure.
The model ask for Beasts of Chaos is very high, and so it doesn't see a lot of play that way. But the power is there. Right?
So they specifically mentioned, so the ones they want to improve are Gits and Cruel Boys, specifically mentioned. And then the ones, they specifically mentioned a few models, which were Puskull Blight Lords, were specifically mentioned out of Nurgle that are too good.
Of course.
And then they did mention that Beast of Chaos is higher because of some efficient models. The efficient models in Beast of Chaos are what? Dragon Ogres?
Dragon Ogres come top of mind. 125 points for what you get it from Dragon Ogres is silly.
I think, other than that, you could say Enlightened, but they just came out in the book, so it would be
I think
hard
it's
to adjust
too
that.
early to really make a change in Enlightened.
So I could easily see Ogres going up to like 150 or higher for the group.
I'm wondering, what do you think has a smaller sample size? Beasts or Legion of the First Prince? Because Legion of the First Prince is sitting at for 55.
Right here.
I think Legion of the First Prince has been on a on a real deep decline since.
They've done some big nerfs, right? Bellicor no longer getting the pass off was really big for Legion, and then it was just a series of other changes, and now they've lost what was a staple caster. Kairos, I think you won't see in Legion anymore. Maybe occasionally, but not the same way that you did, because it doesn't have quite the game shaking ability that it did.
Bone Splitter's sitting up there at 56%.
Bone Splitter's
top 5.
Nerf.
The one book that we viewed so long as just a massive miss in 3.0 now.
Yeah.
It's way
Sits
up there.
perfect.
They also show, they have an arrow showing whether you went up or down within the last 3 months or so. Suns went down a little bit, Lumineth, Ironjaws, Stormcast, stuff like that.
Sure.
A lot of either related to, I assume, the GHB or new books coming out.
And balance updates
Yeah.
for something like Stormcast, losing the Thunderbolt volley on reinforced units. Was
Yeah.
a big change.
And I will say with Stormcast and Ironjaws, a lot of people play them. Like,
For
that
sure.
is like large sample size armies, like where you're getting tons of people playing them.
You see
and-
the same thing with Seraphon, where there's such a huge player base, even though I think Seraphon is maybe the strongest army
I would
right
say
now.
it's never make it again, right?
The win rate for Seraphon doesn't tend to be as skewed as some other armies because fewer people, because so many people play different things than what is really the top tier.
I think you could even lump Night Hunt in there too, just because everybody had those models and
yeah,
you know.
everybody played them
Yeah.
for a couple of tournament cycles, right? Where they were
Everybody got them from Soul Wars.
But think about how good
Wow.
a place the game is in. When
Right.
you look at this, and you could really say that only out of their 45 to 55, there's only, and I'm gonna throw out 56. There's like there's a total of like
You know, I'm
7
throwing
armies.
57,
If you move the goalposts
Yes,
far
if you
enough,
move them.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
So this was their 3 core principles there: the external balance, the internal balance, and then the universal options.
Yeah.
And in terms of external balance, which is really what we're looking at here, the game is in an incredible place. It may be one of the best places that it's been in. I think across the board, armies that almost any army that you're excited about, you can make a viable build out of it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you're seeing that. Like, go on Best Coast Parents. The tournament scene is insane right now.
Mhm.
There's huge tournaments happening every single weekend with 50 players. Like, the game is just so popular, and
growing.
they really just need to have a light touch on this.
Yes.
They don't want to screw anything up.
Beast of Chaos needs to come down
Yes, just
hard.
kill Beast of
Yeah.
Chaos while you still can.
They should require a buyback of all the models. And
I think the 2 other items, the internal balance and the universal options, are really tightly related. I almost view them as the same thing.
Yeah.
When you've got universal options that are just better than the bottom 2/3 of most books, and there's universal options, and everybody knows the big culprits, right? Purple Sun, the Incarnate, Arcane Tome. Those options are better than so much of so many books that even if books have a better build than those universal options makes available, what it does is it kills off the bottom half of that
Yeah.
book, right?
well, and it only gets worse as they update more books because, like the Lumineth book, I can't choose an artifact that I want to take if I want to take a sub-faction unless I buy another artifact somehow.
Sure.
Has a single 3rd edition book done that yet? Where
No.
sub-faction locked artifacts?
I can't think of any.
Yeah, so once the Lumineth book comes out, realistically, I'm
By
going to get access to
January
universal stuff.
2023.
Yeah. By the time I'm graybeard. So, more books will gain access to just using whatever they want.
Right.
And a lot of people will gravitate towards stuff that's just good for everybody. And internal balance, because we didn't explain what that was. They just want to see a variety of war scrolls for each faction being used. Like if I'm playing Seraphon, they want to see bringing all sorts of different models across. Yeah.
And some books do this really well, and those tend to be the books that we get most excited about, talk about the most as a community, not just us.
Sure.
But I think some examples right off the top. Seraphon has pretty good internal balance.
Yeah, once they
be better.
took care of Salamanders, I
Right.
think things kind of opened up.
Soul Blight Gravelords has fantastic internal balance.
Yeah, they're really
a lot of ways to play that book. I think Nurgle actually has pretty good internal balance. I think
some of their heroes are kind of trashy, but other than
sure
that,
they,
it's great.
none of them are perfect. Like Seraphon's the same way. It's tough to make a few things work.
Yeah.
But in general, pretty good. Nighthaunt has very good internal balance. Maybe the best internal balance, although it's a little bit fake with Nighthaunt because there are so many options that fit into such a similar role
Yeah.
that the internal balance is just that everything feels a little bit the same. But there are some books that do this really well, and then there are some books that do this really poorly right now in terms of internal balance. Tzeentch just got a new update, but Tzeentch in their previous book had very poor internal balance, right?
Yeah.
Hedonites is in a better place now, but for a long time, Hedonites had wildly terrible internal balance.
How is Skaven? Because I've played 3 games against Skaven, and it's been almost the same.
I don't know.
I think Skaven has really good internal balance.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of there are a few stinkers, right? But I think a lot of what Skaven has, I think you can lean very heavily in magic. You can lean very heavily into pestilence. You can lean very heavily into shooting, or you can do like rat ogres in the molder side. I think there's a lot of different ways to build strong Skaven armies. I think it's good.
The one thing is it's hard to get away from Storm Fiends because they've been good for
Sure.
a couple books now, and everybody has them, and they still do kind of what they've always done. So it's,
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you're seeing most right now, and I have no problem with that. But I think if you want, you can go in those other directions.
I think when you look at the previous Skaven book, the internal balance was awful, and Storm Fiends were head and shoulders above any other option.
Sure.
And now Storm Fiends are still where they were. A lot of things are a lot closer to that level than they were before.
Yeah. And we talk about this every time a book's coming out for an army we play. Except you, who has an army for every book that comes out, no matter what it is, that we just want to like, oh, I wonder if I can finally bring my blank.
Yes.
And
And
read
usually
have
you
fun and be
can.
competitive.
Except if your name is Glaveler's Stalkers. Or,
yeah, I'm looking at my shelf over there, and I'm like, oh, I want to bring kangaroos. I want to bring Stone Guard. I
Yeah.
want to bring.
Stone Guard, I think, are going to be good.
Yeah. Well, I hope so.
Let's wish list a little bit. All right, so we are convinced that in the next month we're going to get a competitive. No, not Lumina. No,
Okay.
let's
Oh,
not talk
okay.
about
Yeah,
that.
no,
That's 2023. In the next month, we'll get a competitive balance.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's each bring up one thing we want to see.
Okay.
Nick, what would you like to see them do to make an already great game a little bit better?
It'll probably be a popular choice, but the one thing that I think is maybe holding back list building right now in the biggest way and really limiting what this General's Handbook is supposed to be about is the Bounty Hunters Battalion.
For sure.
I think it's excessively punishing to lists that want to be about infantry and their battle line infantry, and it's fine for armies that are able to dodge bounty hunters by running, a bunch of infantry that aren't battle line or being able to get around it in a different way. Right, things on mounts. Cavalry. This is really the General's Handbook of Cavalry, even though it was supposed to be the General's Handbook of Infantry. Yeah. So I think the one thing I would love to see in that data sheet is keeping bounty hunters, keeping it as a bonus against Galatian veterans, but making that a bonus to wound or a bonus to attacks.
I'm not going to let you do it.
Anything
I'm putting you on the spot.
Damage.
What do you think it will? I think bounty hunters is
+1 to attacks.
+1 to attacks. Okay. I think it's going to be +1 to wound.
Sure. So, both of those are very strong bonuses.
Yes.
They are not as strong or as skewing as +1 to damage.
I don't want either of those either.
+1 to hit? I think +1 to wound would be
want.
totally fine. +1 attacks it's very strong.
It would be hard for me to justify the extra drops to get +1 to attacks or +1 to wound. It's typically not hard for me to justify getting the extra drops.
No, you find
+1
two.
damage.
You find 2 spots.
Right.
I want something completely out there, like +1 to your rally roll or something dumb. Just be like completely kill it.
I don't know. +1 to rally roll.
+1 to rally roll wouldn't be horrible, but
you run it in dock and you get the rally on.
But would you take that over counting as 3 on an objective?
I think now you're really thinking about it.
Yeah.
At +1 to wound and +1 to attack, you have some real decisions to make because I still think drops are freaking huge in the game. Like,
Yeah.
I hate not having the choice. I hate it every time I play and I can't decide.
Yeah, I just don't like the idea of, I don't know, because right now the +1 to damage is the same across the board, right? It's +1 to damage, but if you do +1 to attacks for something that goes straight through with mortal wounds or something like that, like
Sure.
the value of that is a lot higher than like +1 attack on a skink or something like that.
Sure. +1 to damage, though, is it's the most valuable change you can make for the most things, right? +1 damage on something like fulminators on the charge is only a 33% increase in damage. But +1 to damage on most of what we're seeing as bounty hunters, 1 damage attacks, typically large volumes of 1 damage attacks. +1 damage is a 100% increase in damage.
Yeah.
It is astronomical how much difference that makes. Now, I say this, I say I want this +1 damage gone, but I do think it needs to be a strong thing that replaces it. Because when we look at books that are coming out with some of the things like this new Tzeentch book has, and their ability to put pinks on the table in large numbers, potentially as expert conquerors, then
Give
we
them a
do
5
need
up ward save.
right. Give them a 5 up ward save. We'll talk about that more a little bit in the Tzeentch book, but you do need some significant bonus that can play a foil to those things.
What if you just got more narrow in your scope for your damage? What if bounty hunters was, I don't know, +1 damage against monsters or something? Just like completely change the way that it works.
I think it would, it would be just as strong against something that's not a problem right now. And I think when you're introducing a counter like this, it really should be a counter to something that you worry is going to be too strong.
And which I think they expected expert conquerors to be too strong.
Right.
But then they...
and it is, to be clear,
it's very strong, yeah. +1 to wound. I still think +1 to wound is a really nice buff.
For
and
sure.
I think
It is.
+1 attack is a very nice buff as well. I mean, it's better than +1 damage. +1 damage has eliminated Galatian veterans.
When I look
to a
at
large extent.
the value of bonuses just for normal abilities, +1 to hit is the least useful right now because it's so ready to get from so many things. +1 to wound is very good. +1 to attacks is better. +1 to damage is head and shoulders above.
You never see anyone take less than 2 war chances in Iron Jaws, right?
Right,
Because
for a reason.
I just want to see them do something where we get up and we open the data, whatever, the changes, and go, wait, what did they do? And it's completely off the wall.
But I don't want them to scrap what they have completely. Right? I want them to shape what they have and then add something new.
Yeah.
Let's let this last 3 months of this GHB be, I think, what they intended. Because any change they make, by the way, in 3 months, doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
Most, if they keep with their promises. So I'm fine with changing. If pinks are too strong, we're only 3 months away from them being able to fix that up, right?
Yeah.
If they choose to fix it up. If Expert Conquerors stays around and they get rid of Bounty Hunters entirely, then 150 wounds from 30
I don't want that at all.
Right, 225 with the 5 up ward in Expert Conquerors. These are things that you cannot deal with, right? So I think there does need to be a strong counter there. I just wish it would be a little bit less strong than it is right now, or maybe a little bit less situationally swingy than it is right now.
Alex, what do you want besides Illuminath book?
in the what do they call it?
The
Generals.
It's the data slate in 40K. I think it's the
that's
balance.
always
The
balance,
balance scroll.
something.
Yeah.
Something. I would love to see some changes to the Incarnate because I've played against it twice, and it has not been fun for. I feel like not been fun for either player either time.
What changes would you like to see?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want it to go up too crazily because once you start, well, actually, maybe just a points change to where it's fighting for a spot with something in the book.
Sure.
Like right now, if you wanted to bring like Ideneth the choice between a incarnate's 400 points.
Yep.
Yeah, with a 400 point incarnate or a 500 point turtle is a lot easier to make than if it's a 500 point incarnate and a 500 point turtle. And I'd really like to see, just point it up just a little. 450.
I'd add one change to that, and that's no matter what happens, even when it goes wild, it can't eat your own endless spells.
Yeah. That, I don't like that at all. Because we've seen a couple, you've been talking about a list that would abuse the crap out of that.
Yeah,
And then
I haven't
we've seen
seen
it
that
with
yet,
Tzeentch,
but...
that's already been employed.
Mhm.
I could see that being a fix. The points is something. I wish you could retreat from it. That's an especially hard thing because so often you can just throw it up the table. And now, depending on how many units you can get into it, they're stuck there. And a lot of times those units can't efficiently deal with it, depending upon what they're going into.
I love the theme of not being able to retreat with it. Like it's causing everything around it to go into such a berserk frenzy that they can't get out of combat. I love when the rules match the feel of a model as well as that rule matches it. But I do understand the negative.
They have. I think they've made a point to say that not being able to retreat is not fun.
Sure.
Like they used to let Bone Splitters have the entire faction that I loved to play that wouldn't let you retreat. That was fun for me, not for anyone else. Didn't they recently change one other no retreat clause?
Nighthaunt has the no retreat clause, but it's extremely limited in the Lady Olinder's faction.
So I just think not being able to get out of combat when you're in a bad combat sometimes sucks. So that's one thing I could see them doing. But I think the Incarnate has really divided the community in a lot of ways. Like there's people that enjoy playing it, and there's people that if they see it on the table, they don't even want to play.
I would also just for changes for it, I would love to see something where you don't want it to go wild.
Sure.
Like you really like if you had to, when you're in your movement phase, if it's wild, you have to roll, and if you don't beat a roll, you don't move it.
Sure. Or your opponent gets to move it.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to give my opponent that much. That's a lot. If it doesn't move, then you have to get your guys away far enough so that it can't charge them. And
I think it would be interesting if there was a very strong disincentive for it to go wild.
Yeah.
Such that you needed to protect the bonded hero. Yeah. And what we see right now is that you keep it 3 inches away from yourself, and then you don't really care if the bonded hero dies.
No, you don't care at all.
Yeah.
You'd rather he does. If you're running a bunch of endless spells, you're maybe going to deliberately make sure that he does. But in general, there's never really a downside.
Yeah, that just seems like it's outside of the scope of what they originally wanted to have happen. I don't think they got the Incarnate super wrong.
No, I think it's like a little bit of people just building on each other.
Yeah,
one of the big worst things they did was they brought it out in an expensive box. If they would have originally released it as just a standalone at $60 or $80, I think a lot more people would have been like, fine. But you heard a lot of this pay to win. It's that kind of thing. If it would have been, although we've always had the option of bringing like $30 Etsy, printed ones that look just like it. But
I think when we go back to the 3 pillars that they laid out in that article, it doesn't really affect external balance, right? Every army has the opportunity to run it. One of the things that I've always been excited about it is that even the bottom tier armies get the most help by running something like this, right? So top tier armies have better options anyway. Bottom tier armies get a leg up by running something like this. I think overall it's probably beneficial to external balance, but it's certainly detrimental to internal balance of armies and obviously to the universal options.
Yeah.
So I just want to see. This is a very specific request.
I don't want Beasts of Chaos.
No. I'm not gonna say any of that. For Cruel Boys, their battle line option, which are gut rips.
Yeah.
Can we just have them either get a better save or make them like 150 points?
Did they?
Yeah, I think 150, 160.
No, there could be a couple of problems. So if bounty hunters gets better as far as balance.
Mhm.
I think Gut Rippas get a little bit better because they won't. I mean, they still suck, but they
Sure.
won't suck as hard. Now, if you get them down to like 150, it just lets you bring more stuff, and that's what I thought that army is needed for a while.
Did they make Hobgraph's battle line too?
For
If you
each unit of
take-
Gut Rippas.
So you still have to take if you're in
That's
anything
my
but
least
big yellows.
favorite. That's my least favorite. If you take this unit, you get another unit.
As a
as
Lumineth
battle
player,
line.
you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
I think the danger of reducing the points too much on Gut Rippas is making them in the big wah element of that book, making them too much the same as Bone Splitters, right? They need a distinctive identity. Ard Boys are cheap. They've got the great rally, and they've got a good save, 4-up save.
They're
With the
cheap,
6-up
which
wounds.
is the
Sure.
key, yeah.
Right. Bone Splitters are huge amounts of wounds, cheap, right? Very low damage,
Yeah, horrible.
horrible damage, but cheap and just buckets of wounds. I think if they push Gut Rippa's points down without any other change, just push their points down, they can probably get to a relatively good external balance point of view. But they start to stomp on the internal balance of the book and push Bone Splitters out of that role. So I'd love to see them keep their points where they are and give them some fundamental change. Something other than save.
I like what you're saying theoretically, but as a big WoW player, nobody plays any battle line
Sure.
other than you might see a little brutes sprinkled in on occasion.
Sure.
But you're basically just trying to get the minimum units of Ard Boys, or if you want to get a little defensive, you bring more Ard Boys. But you haven't. I don't know why you just don't see any other battle line options. You
I
definitely
would-
don't see Gut Rippas because they're garbage,
So-
and you don't see the Bone Splitters options because even though they're efficient, they don't do any damage and they're still 155. So you need to,
Sure.
So it's
Take a walk with me through the land of imagination here.
All right, Willy Wonka, show us what you're talking about.
Gut Rippas and Cruel Boys are really the element of that book that is supposed to be about sneaky and tricky, right? They are the Mork in the Gorka Mork here.
yeah.
I thought you were going to say in the Mork and Mindy.
In the Mork and Mindy universe, they are Mork.
I don't know why.
What if they?
Nanu.
What if their War Scroll remained completely unchanged, except for one new ability, and their points went up to they're at 180 right now. Let's make them 210, and
This
then
ability better be effing amazing. That's all I'm gonna say.
Deep Strike on the War Scroll.
Anytime they want.
Well, with the normal
Like, are we
restrictions.
talking like?
Like
Something
Outside of
that-
9?
Are we talking like?
We're not
Sylvan-
talking. We're talking Stormcast Deep Strike, not Tree Rev Deep Strike.
Oh, okay.
So you can deep strike them. They come out of the swamp, around and behind your enemy at some point during the game. There they are. Their mobility is still very poor, except you can build a viable wall with them. I think that would give them a real, fundamentally different identity in the rest of the book. Give them a place in Big Wah. It would give them a place in Cruel Boys. You'd be happy to have them.
210 points. I
Yeah.
don't know. Man.
I think at 180 they'd be too
They'd
strong.
be
with that ability.
210 you put in front of something and they fall like chaff.
Sure. So maybe you spend 1,000 points on them and box your opponent in. I don't know.
I don't know. It's
it's
not
a
a
thought.
bad idea.
I-
It's definitely not a bad idea.
I would maybe not that specific ability, but I would love to see them give something that leans into that tricky, sneaky.
Let's just make them tree
element.
reps at 210 and their tree reps. I'm all into it.
Sure. I would love to see them lean into their identity rather than push them into a place where there's
One last
already
thing.
something.
What if you could take them in units of 5? Yeah, it's 90 points.
Oh, it'd be much better counting as battle line for 90 points. Vastly
That would
better.
be fine with me.
Yeah.
Would you?
Because then you're not just sucking all those points.
You still never take them over Art Boys.
Not really, no.
At 85.
The only good thing is maybe you
Yeah,
can get
it's
that
five.
many
It's
up
5
in there.
points.
And the downside of that also is that you're capped at 15 then.
Do you?
Oh no.
Do you? Tree revs are pick up and put down on the same turn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
They're awesome.
Would they make more sense as something like a chameleon skink, where you pick them up and put them down,
Put 'em down
the following turn?
It's
Sure.
we're in the land of imagination.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So, yeah.
You know, that would be a little bit less strong than the Triad
Yeah,
version,
and
but still strong.
then 190.
I just want to see. I feel like that's the weakest part of that whole book. Like,
Sure.
there's a lot of good stuff going on. I can't play Boat Boys at all. I'm embarrassed every time I get them up there because they just get like shot off, and I get like barely any damage through on them. I might have to retire them as far as I'm concerned. But
My frustration with them is that they're the weakest mechanically, but they're also the weakest thematically. The gall of the sneaky Cruel Boys battle line unit making a bunch of noise in order to distract the opponent
And going very slowly.
going very slowly, and then making a bunch of noise to give a unit -1 to hit. That I cannot get behind thematically. I have a narrative problem with their rules as written, so I'd love to see them have something else that does fit in the theme.
so to sum it up, we're excited for a little change, and then we would love to see it happen before Dragonfall. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, let's throw this thing into complete anarchy.
I love competitive events immediately after a bunch of upheaval. I love that rush of list building and trying to solve the new thing, and I love that change. As somebody who gets in a lot of games, I love that change. People who don't get in a lot of games probably less.
What's the
We have
cutoff?
15. We have 15 days.
What's the cutoff for Dragonfall?
So it's the 14th. We're recording on the 29th. We have 15 days
Sure.
for it to come out. I'm gonna say we get it out.
I believe we will.
In 15 days. They say at the bottom,
Oh, they do. They have some.
coming soon.
Soon. The Lumineth book is also coming soon.
Lumineth book is coming in a few more sleeps,
Oh,
they said.
okay. All right. I like it.
Our next battle scroll coming soon is called the Battle Scroll. We keep forgetting that.
Sure.
Coming soon. Oof.
With
That
a-
could be any time.
Yeah, but there is an
Tomorrow.
exclamation point.
It could
Tomorrow.
It could, yeah. You heard it here first. Coming tomorrow. This will be out by the time. Oh, that would be miserable. Come out after Sunday, please.
Yes. Come out on Monday of next week so
Yeah.
you guys can. The 20 of you that end up watching this will
be.
be interested in our
So-
discussion.
Should we dig into the newest battle tome?
Yeah. You know what though? It's nice that we don't have to talk about it a ton.
Sure.
It's very similar.
So the Tzeentch Battletome just came out. We've gotten full spoilers. Man has read book. So
Does
we
it-
know what's coming.
Does it seem like the books that they have the lightest touches with the updates, they do the least amount of fanfare for?
I
coming
believe
out
that's
too?
generally the
Fire
case.
Slayers, Idneth, Tzeentch, Lumineth, they haven't talked about. They didn't even show. Normally they like, hey, here's the
Yes.
here's a table of contents.
Tzeentch, nothing.
And they didn't. I think they showed the Tzeentch one eventually, but they showed both of the destruction factions that are coming out.
Yeah,
Before that,
months
right.
ahead.
Yeah, before the Tzeentch one.
And to be clear, this was a very small set of changes for the Tzeentch book in general. They've got some new, very cool themes that they lean into, and I think there's going to be some new armies that rise out of the Tzeentch book. But for a battle tome that is dedicated to the Lord of Change, it didn't seem like they really hit the mission of having a lot of change. A lot of War Scrolls are effectively untouched. A lot of abilities are
Destiny
very
dice are still there.
Yeah.
Fate points are still there.
Mm-hmm.
Blue
They
still
got rid of that.
costs the same as Bryn.
Yeah.
Still have -1 to hit your wound.
I like
your,
the
Locus
stuff they
of-
got rid of.
Locus of Change,
Right.
still the same.
I like the stuff that they
the
got
locus
rid
of
of.
unchange.
Yeah. I like the stuff they got rid of that just muddied up a game. Like
Sure.
those, I can't remember what they were called. But
Agendas?
yeah, the
Yeah.
agendas where at
Those
the
are
beginning
brutal.
of it, yeah.
Right.
Like,
And your opponent couldn't really play around them because they didn't really know what was
yeah,
going on.
just wipe them out. It doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
And they did get wiped out.
I think
Yeah.
they cleaned up a ton in this book. They really streamlined the way it plays. It seems like the sort of book that a much newer player can get into
Yeah.
and enjoy, whereas Tzeentch before was one of the very high skill cap armies. I don't really like that term. I think all armies have a high skill cap, but one of those armies. Maybe skill floor is a better term. It had a very high skill floor to really play it well.
Because your hero phase was just so intense.
Yes, and so precise, and there was a lot of that, and they've cleaned a lot of that up. It's a much more approachable book. So
one of the biggest changes is now that you can pay for one of their endless spells.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first round, it gets cast unbindable.
Yep, can't be dispelled in the first round.
Can you just say unbindable?
Unbindable.
Which is awesome because they've got a couple of great endless spells now. The symbol of Tzeentch is, and I forget what the name, Burning Sigil. I think.
Yeah. I forget the name exactly.
The ability is great now, and the fact that you can get it out there immediately pre-game, even if you're going second in round one, it's up there in your opponent's movement phase. Awesome.
Demonic Simulacrum is like maybe the more fringy, but still decent choice.
Yep. And the book is solid.
Tzeentch has always been a different type. It's not going to fight you in melee, even though for some reason, if you'll read a lot of commentary, the artifacts it got are frequently tied to like melee, which is weird because
not super melee.
No.
Yeah.
So they've got two kind of new themes. One is that they've got a fair number of things that reduce opponent saves, and one of those things is Purple Sun, like everybody has. But then they can give Ren to their flamers through their subfaction, which they always had. They've also got a spell now to reduce saves by 1. Yeah. And when you start to stack those things up, some of those otherwise ineffective attacks they often have start to become really punchy. Their other theme that they've got is something that Kairos did before, and a couple other things did before, where when they wound things or kill models, kick out a chaos spawn. Yeah. Now things like the Burning Sigil, the Magisters.
That's a big theme.
A few other things. It's become a big theme. You can start to generate a fair number of chaos spawns over the course of a game.
A couple other cool things is now the ability for Kairos and the Lord of Change to steal other people's endless spells.
For sure.
So now you might be less motivated if you're not super magic heavy to maybe not have that Purple Sun out there.
Right.
Kairos is going to easily steal and send back at you, or
if
whatever.
he's swinging 2 Purple Suns around. Well, not one model swinging them both around, but 2 separate ones controlling. That's impactful.
So that's cool. They did get rid of his. What was that everybody
took?
Reroll. No, his super nuke got taken out.
Right. So I think it was gift.
Oh, his force.
Which will take him out of
Legion.
Legion.
It still averages 6 mortal wounds at top bracket. Now it's, instead of just a flat 6, it's roll 9 dice, and at top bracket on 3s, it's a mortal wound. So that's an average of 6.
But it's nice.
It doesn't kick out a spawn.
Yeah.
They changed all of the spawn generation from within 3 inches
to within 1, right?
To within 1, and they moved a lot of that, like from the sigil. That's now at the end of the movement phase, so you can no longer do the cheeky throw the spawn in, retreat it.
Yeah.
And so, that has an impact on some things, but in general, that spawn generation is still good. Chaos Spawn's got a new War Scroll in Tzeentch, and it is a named Tzeentch Chaos Spawn War Scroll. So this is specific to the Tzeentch Chaos Spawn, doesn't affect the Slaves of Darkness Chaos Spawn.
Beast of Chaos has this Chaos Spawn too, right?
Yes, and I forget which War Scroll they use.
Yeah.
They might be able to take either.
Yeah.
Right. But
hard to tell
it's
just don't touch the book. Just leave it as the old.
Yeah, I'm really glad they changed.
I'm really glad
they changed the keywords on Zangors in the new book, or whatever you were complaining about before.
Some of the
7 people that care about this.
Some of the things that were really good before, I think, are going to be less good. I mean, Kairos, obviously, chiefly among them. Enlightened on Discs. You and I have slightly different opinions about Enlightened on Discs. I think they're slightly worse.
Yes, they're slightly worse, but they have things that are interesting.
Yes, they've gotten a better save now. They get +1 to wound when you're going second, which is a really interesting mechanic. Tzeentch is a bit of a glass cannon army. It does not want to get doubled in general. You want to control that priority, make sure they don't get doubled. and then capitalize in one swing double. So if you can go second, maintain that going second until you can close the door. That's where you want to be, and now that fits that theme.
My biggest issue is I'm not upset. Rerolls have been generally flushed from all books, so I didn't ever anticipate that would stay. But my biggest concern is that I don't see a real reason to take a bunch of units of them as much as is just because you can only use all out attack once, right? Like, and hitting on 4s is pretty crappy in general. So if you can only use all out attack once, that unit, there's only one unit getting it, and now you don't have the passive Zangor Shaman buff, which you could take a 135 point Zangor Shaman, keep him within 12 of a couple units. Now all of a sudden you'd be on 3s and 2s on the second turn, which is pretty darn strong. I mean, it's not perfect, but it will do a lot of damage.
So this is
They're not in Enlightened on Disc just aren't as good in Tzeentch, right?
Right.
Because the rend is not where it is in Beast of Chaos.
Does Kairos have the +1 to cast aura that the Lord of Change has?
I think because it's all Lord of Changes, right?
Well, I don't believe Kairos has that aura. I think but we'd have to double check.
Yeah.
But what he does is that he still has that ability to flip his casting dice.
Lord of Change does
Lord of Change does.
Lord of Change
well.
does, okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm glad they kept.
Sure.
Even though I hate playing against it,
I hate that.
I just like the rule. It's like a cool rule.
Sure.
If you're going to be dominant in Magic, they don't have like the +3 to cast, but that flipping the dice thing is pretty nice.
Yeah, and then they changed that aura of +1 to cast from it used to be a command ability. They took that off. Now it's just always. I think Flamer's got a buff.
They got another attack, right?
They got +1 to hit on their War Scroll.
Against units of 5 or more models, right?
Did they get one more attack per?
No, they got
or just
they hit their 3s and 4s now,
right,
I believe,
instead of 4s
and then and then they get +1 to hit against units of 5 or more, as opposed to 10 or more like
nice
it used to be.
for them.
Yeah, they really fell out of favor once they limited the amount of pluses you could get, because there's really no reason to bring Flamers and the Exalted Flamer, because you can't double up on that and then get the +1 from the unit size. And what else did they?
I think there's really probably some real play in an Eternal Conflagration list where you do have that rend on your Flamers, and then planning on stacking up some of the save reduction that they can do.
Screamers, did they get helped at all?
They're relatively unchanged. They're basically the same.
I
think their attack profile improved a little bit. But
I think they took away their mortals.
I think they still do them on wizards, right? But they don't.
Yeah.
This is really educated. Thanks for coming. Yes. The one thing I'll say is I'm excited about Skyfires. Now we just debated this a little bit before the cast. I really enjoy you can't be there's no minuses to hit, so with them now they're only hitting on 4s, but in Unleash Hell they'll be on 4-ups. You can't look out Sir against them. You can't all out defense against them, and
you don't get a cover bonus.
You don't get a cover bonus, so they're only 6 shots, but they always get to what they want to shoot.
Right.
Because they move 16, and they have 24-inch range. And now, obviously, with Destiny dice, if you need to take out a hero, throw a couple 6s. So you might not have that in everything, but you can clearly screen for them, have them picking off stuff throughout the game, just being an annoyance. Skyfires have suffered for a long time. They used to be the absolute best in first edition, and they got nerfed because everybody hated them because they were too good. And now they're kind of. I think they have a place in Tzeentch armies now.
I was thinking about they don't gain D3 damage on the charge anymore. Screamers.
Sure.
So
I think the one War Scroll that maybe we were most optimistic for changes for, the most changed War Scroll in Age of Sigmar, didn't get fundamentally any real changes.
I think they're happy kind of where they left it.
I think Pink Horrors are in an okay place, but I do worry that the subfaction that they can't be retreated from is still available. And they've now printed on, I believe it's the Arcanite spell list, 2 spells that I'll call out here. One spell is kind of a junk drawer spell that gives -1 to hit or -1 to saves or a couple other bonuses.
Really shows up Trondus.
Right. It's basically Krondus' spell cast on an 8. Any old wizard can get it. But the choice that you'll most often take there is -1 to saves.
Yep.
So suddenly pink horrors with their no rend attacks become a little bit punchier and fits into the rest of that theme. But then the other really showstopper spell I think in this book is cast by an Arcanite wizard, and it's pick a unit. They get depending on the number of destiny dice that you have in your pool, they get I think it starts at a 6-up ward if you're very low on destiny dice. But if you're full on destiny dice or nearly full on destiny dice, so the case over the early parts of the game, this is giving a 5-up ward to the unit and a 4-up spell ignore to the unit. And that's fine for a lot of things. When the Lord of Change puts the 5-up ward and the 4-up spell ignore on itself, fine.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's an Arcanite spell, so it would have to be a Mortal Caster. But regardless, when you get that on a lot of things, a unit of Arcanites, a unit of Zangors, fine. When you put it on 30 pink horrors that are expert conquerors, and you take that 150 wound unit and you make it effectively 225 wounds with a 4-up spell ignore that you can't retreat from, suddenly things get a little bit ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. What are they? 225 or 220?
They are 250 for 10.
50.
So you're talking about a 750 point unit to do that.
Plus the hero that has to cast it.
But you often have armies now.
What's it cast on, by the way? We didn't mention.
I believe that one casts on a 6 or 7.
Okay.
But you often have armies now that are in that 110 to 120 wound level for the entire army. And when you have a 225 wound block that gets in your front lines, starts slugging into things.
So Bounty Hunters should be +2 damage.
Bounty Hunters in that situation maybe should be +2 damage. Although if Bounty Hunters is the counter to it, you can run 19 pinks and a blue to make them not battle line, and then they dodge Galatian Veterans.
How do you do that?
So when you run a unit of horrors, you can pick the color of each model. And so you can, and they are only battle line if every starting horror is a pink horror. So you can run 19 pink horrors and 1 blue horror for the same price as 20 pink horrors. You don't get a discount on that blue one. It still costs you for the pinks, but now it is no longer a battle line unit. Doesn't meet your battle line criteria, but it also means they're not Galatian Veterans. You can't run them as expert conquerors then, but you get the upside of completely dodging Bounty Hunters. And there's just enough wounds and enough problematic debuffs that you can put on them. Keep in mind, if you get them near Demon Hero, they're also -1 to hit. They can, with a Hornblower alive, the pink horror Hornblower alive, that gives them +1 to save. So this unit is on as long as that model is alive. It's in your first wave to die, but as long as that's alive, they've got a 5-up save, potentially -1 to hit, potentially a 5-up ward, potentially a 4-up spell ignore, and this is a Tzeentch book that has some fairly good debuffs you can apply to your opponents. You can start doing some things to make it so that your opponent is just not going to get through this unit of pink horrors. Things like generating chaos spawns on their archers start to make this a situation that the opponent can't deal with.
Simple fix is that it can only be cast on Arcanite units.
Yeah, make it on mortals only, right?
Yeah, I mean, and then we're not worried about it, which I'm going to start writing G-Dub tomorrow.
Right.
Talk about this.
I think that's the one place where I see this book, which is a book of relatively small changes. That's the one place where I see this maybe going off the rails a little bit, is that one spell and that one interaction specifically.
Who'd have thought pink horrors would be related to something that was broken in the book?
It's never happened before, so.
Yeah.
They're just at a point where you're at 5 points per wound. And when you're in that neighborhood, things can start getting really ugly.
Yeah.
But gut rippers have to be 210 to get that. No.
To get
Well,
them moving around.
gut rippers currently are at 9 points of wound.
Are they 90 points for a unit?
No, 180 for
180
for 20 wounds.
For 20 wounds, so 9 points of wound. So, I mean, they could see a point reduction down to that 150, 160. They're still significantly more expensive than pinks per wound. 5 points per wound is hyper efficient.
Yeah.
And dangerously so. What I wanted to see for pink horrors was a fundamental rework on how we think about pink horrors. We think about them as a chaffy, cheap unit that is just a bucket of wounds. That splitting is so thematic, I think you want to keep that. But what I really wanted to see them become is an expensive elite 5-man unit.
Yeah.
To justify the number of wounds that you're paying for, and then have the cost matter.
We'll see. I'm writing G-Dub.
You like
get this fixed.
You like the book, or
Did
you like the book
I've
before?
never been
And
like a Tzeentch guy.
yeah,
Like, when I've played it, I've played like Skyfires and Enlightened and like some of that.
Or Arcan.
Or Arcan,
How
right?
many-
Like,
how many Lord of Changes do you have?
I have one. I have one and I have a Kairos, or maybe two.
So have you ever played either of them?
I have played. Nick has played Kairos.
I've played Justin's Kairos,
okay.
I
Good,
may have played
your
Lord of
money
Change
out of it.
once.
Oh, okay, I'm just checking.
But
These are for me. These questions are for me.
I don't know. I don't like spending that much time in the hero phase. I don't think.
Sure. It's an army that, to me, has never really fit what I want the army to feel like. And so it's one that I've never really leaned into playing. I've borrowed pieces from it for my Legions of the First Prince armies. Love mixing in some Kairos, some Blue Scribes. But I've never been super excited about playing Tzeentch. I think this book doesn't fundamentally change that for me. It's still going to feel a lot of the same.
Yeah.
It's going to be sitting back in its castle, busting out some mortal wounds. What's in front of that castle, there's going to be a lot of variation, and I think
Karka Acolytes are still not good.
yeah, they're just okay. I think if you try to build an Arcanite list or a Zangor list right now, I think you can get close to a competitive list, but I don't think you can really break through.
I've
The
always
demons are still
loved that
the
model. Why
Really?
can't they? You don't like them?
The Arcanites?
I like that they
Yeah,
come
the
20
Birdman.
in a box.
The Birdman? Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I just have always thought like they could have done something cool.
I used to run them as
They just fail on doing anything
Yeah.
cool with them.
I used to run them in 40k as Zangor proxies because they were 20 to a box.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is just the value is so high.
My theme in Chaos Armies is consistent. I've said it 100 times. I want a mortal army that during the game becomes a demon army, and I don't think that is here for Tzeentch yet.
No. All right, so let's wrap it up with a couple of things that are coming up. So, Lumineth is not.
One more thing to touch on in Tzeentch. We would be remiss not to mention that this is a book with a bunch of really, really powerful spells. There's some good command traits in the book, some good enhancements across the board, and a bunch of melee artifacts that no one ever wants to take.
There's going to be so much.
It's
arcane
weird
tone
because
in
I
this
think
book.
I think there's an artifact they can take.
Yeah.
Frustrating miss, I think, on Games Workshop's part. I think that they looked at the enhancements here and they said, we want to make melee viable and we want to make melee an interesting way to play with fate points, destiny dice. And so what they did is they really leaned into the melee side of the artifacts and made it so that there are a bunch of artifacts that are just kind of going to be dodged because you do not have melee heroes that you're going to kit out with melee artifacts. You'd rather have something as simple as the Arcane Tome, like we talked about earlier, that universal option that gives you another cast, another fate point. Lets
Get
you
those
carry it
things
anyway.
out.
Yep. So yeah. Anyway,
So
Upcoming
we
book.
did get a little spoiler on
King,
I think it was a leak. King
Bride.
Bride.
I think it was a leak that turned into an early preview.
So yeah, I mean, so right now without knowing the remainder of his rules,
Mm-hmm.
he looks fairly average. But I think he's gonna have a lot of interesting We have no idea.
Right.
But we think he might be a priest.
Well, I think it's confirmed that he's a priest.
Okay, he's a priest.
Right.
So
we
nice.
saw his profile. Somebody took a screenshot of his profiles or a picture.
It was
Those
of
profiles.
the build profile, right?
Right, from the box, which isn't a full war scroll, it's just the profiles. And it was relatively lackluster even for a Mega Gargant. Mega Gargants are a little bit pillow-fisted in general.
Well, if you roll well, they're not. Right?
Well, sure.
But,
very few things are if you roll well.
But they have a tendency to whiff.
Right, for sure. And so King Broad, I think, fits that mold. He's a little bit less killy than a lot of things. I think people kind of wanted him to be some kind of massive combat beast, which is a valid thing to want.
Well, we got the Beast Smasher.
You've got the Beast Smasher. So I think King Broad is really shaping up based on what we've heard, the rumors that he's a priest, and then seeing those profiles. I think what he's really shaping up to be is an extra durable, because he's got 40 wounds instead of just 35, an extra durable support piece for the Gargants faction. Interesting to see if they can really pull that off in terms of support. And then we've got the other one, the Beast Smasher.
Which, into a monster, is going to be an absolute...
Maybe.
Well, okay, so let's read that. So he's got a range 3, 3 attacks, 3s to hit, 2s to wound. This is just the only profile we know right now.
Right.
Which is his
we can expect he's going to have some sort of stomps,
and
probably a
jump
rock
up and
throw.
down.
Yeah.
Right.
Doesn't have the rend listed, right?
Right.
But,
But his club, go through it.
So if you get into a monster, you get 1 attack.
You have the option to take 1 attack. You can use the...
if you do...
you can say that it will unleash a beast breaking. So you either get the normal
I think
profile.
you're going to try it. If you want to have fun.
Yeah, you're playing Gargants, you want to stomp around. So you can replace its normal profile, which is a solid melee profile, with 1 attack.
And when they say can't be modified, they mean the number of attacks cannot be modified.
Correct.
So you can still
get 1
attack.
You can buff it up.
So you might be on a 2 and a 2.
Right.
With Ren that is unknown.
Well, the rend we believe is pretty high. It's a tabled rend, so I would expect to see
Maybe
this start at 4 or 3,
yeah,
and then table down.
But if you get it, 5d6 damage.
5d6 damage,
which is 14, 17 and a half damage.
You've given up the rest of your damage from the club for the turn, but when you hit that 5d6 damage attack. However, it is the same thing that is true of Alariel, it's true of Avalanor, it's true of every time they print one of those profiles, one of those shooting profiles that's D6 damage or 6 damage or whatever, and hits on 2s and wounds on 2s. It's just never
How
going to
many times do I shoot with Techless and I'm like, I never make this, and I roll 1.
Right.
I roll 1.
Every time.
I mean, with Alariel, I think I played Joe in a tournament like in Indiana, and he could not hit with her.
When those attacks actually go through, I'm just dumbfounded. I expect those 1 attack profiles to fail. This is a 1 attack profile.
Oh, I'm going to use it.
You're going to use it because you're there for the memes.
2 and 2.
Don't let your memes be dreams. This is a 5 damage profile in general. So with 3 attacks, you're averaging, 15 damage of potential output. 5d6 is averaging 17 and a half damage of average output. So is it worth it to have the hyper variance to go from 17 and a half? And I say averaging, that's discounting saves and hits and wounds and everything like that. But is it worth it to get that 2.5 extra damage of potential output to greatly reduce your...
Situationally, I'll say this. If I'm going up against a Mega Boss on Maw Crusher, right? When I know that I could one-shot it, I definitely can't one-shot it with 3 attacks, right?
But this isn't your only profile.
Not known.
Right. We know that there will be some other profiles.
Yes, if I have a chance to one-shot a Mega Boss, I'm gonna try
You're
for
gonna
the
try.
one
Sure.
shot.
Yeah.
Well, and you're just going to allocate the club into the Mega Boss and all the other
Yes,
attacks into
exactly.
something else, right?
They're going into our boys or pegs, and I'm just.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what the rend is too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
If the
think the
rend
rend's
is-
gotta be.
It's got to be at least 3.
It's gotta
Yeah.
be
Three's the
I'm
floor.
gonna say it's 3 because that's what they usually max out with in Giants, unless they make
What's
this
a
one
Mega
extra
Boss
special.
save?
3 up
It's a 3 up that
effectively.
frequently can be
So I
a
can go to a 2
yeah. So
from all out defense or something else.
I was trying to think. They got rid of like the
So
command
it's a-
trait that used to give it
It's a
+1.
4 up, but then based on your weapon option, it then becomes a 3 up, and then
A 3
Yes.
up characteristic that can be saved
Right.
down to a 2.
down to a 2.
And then if you get, I don't know if there's another bonus, but I mean, I don't know. If you get him back to a 4 up save with one,
Then you can't do the 1 attack, I
No.
think. But
I'm hoping the rend is like 5.
sure, it
Yeah.
does table.
Yeah.
So I expect it to be, my money's on 4. My money's on 4, 3, 2, 1 on
You
this
don't see
table.
4 run very often.
You
I don't think it should table below 2
Sure.
because it's a big club. I would have
It's huge
tabled below 2.
Oftentimes, megas are that last bracket is something like a 5 wound bracket. It's a pretty narrow gap
Yeah.
at the bottom.
But if it's rend 3, I see you taking this 1 damage attack and having it saved on a lot, and you're like,
Well,
oh,
that's
or
the
this
dream.
1 attack,
I mean,
and you're like, oh,
we all
okay.
get the dream.
I do love that this, the balance aside, whether it's better to take the 1 damage or the 3 damage attack, I love that it gives you a meaningful decision in that combat. And when you do choose the 1 damage attack, it fits into
The 1
Again,
attack.
right the 1 attack.
I kept saying 1 damage attack.
sure.
and
It fits into what I think Giants players want. And this goes back to this entire Giants book, the Sons of Behemoth book. I feel like a lot of what the Sons of Behemoth book has been is not necessarily what people who want to play Big Stompy Giants want that book to feel like.
I think everybody would have been okay if they would have all been on 5 up saves,
Mm-hmm.
but then had crazy damage, right? Like so that they could die.
Damage,
They
right?
could die
I think
quickly, but they
people-
could also like really.
bit of force on the battlefield, right?
Whereas right now they're okay
Mhm.
on the attack profiles. If a lot of them hitting on 4s, but they're okay.
But they win because they die slow.
Yes, they died real slow.
Right, and that's when I capture the essence of Giants players that I play against, people who are passionate about Giants, I don't think that they are super excited about the concept of retreating out of combat and dying slow.
There's so many times when you fluff as a Giants player too, and you're just like, this Giant just did 7 wounds.
And no one ever wants the best play to be to retreat their Giant out of combat.
No, and it's all the time.
All the time,
best
that's
thing.
the best play.
Yeah.
If you're in combat, you're probably better off retreating out and sitting on an objective. So, I've been frustrated with the Giants book in general since it came out because I feel like the rules and the way it plays missed the memo. Right? They missed the mark of what the Giants book should feel like, and then I see a rule like this, and I say, "This is what the Giants book should feel
Do
like."
we get meaningful changes, or is it just this with a couple more?
No,
I
I think you get meaningful changes.
I'm
from this
hopeful for this. I think there's going to be some meaningful direction change about Giants. I would love if they said Giants can't retreat and they're just more killy than they were before.
Well, there's at least 4 new War Scrolls, right? Because King
We get
Brad
Broad.
has
Beast Crusher.
yes, and then
Just 2,
did they
right?
say that isn't there a non-named version of the Broad?
I don't believe so.
But there's a named version of this.
well so the named version of this I expect to be like the named versions of the existing because
Yeah.
there'll be a mercenary available to
I would agree with
the
that.
destruction faction specifically.
Okay,
So
yeah, okay. Never mind.
So I think the book is going to have 1 new subfaction, and then King Broad I think will be outside of the subfaction world for the Giants. I don't think he'll have his own subfaction because he's not going to be your general, right?
Yeah, I would just like to say that even though this is a new model, I will still not be able to tell this apart from any of the other giants.
Well, this one's
They
especially
all look
bad
the
Right.
same.
This one is a very generic looking giant.
because I think he even has the same horns on his back
These
as
are some.
yeah.
one other guy. My I know them. They're like my children, so I can tell them apart. But
Yeah.
no, but
When they're
like
yours,
I
yeah.
can tell the giants apart
Yeah.
now as well, but
it's
it took
not
me a
like
while.
Fire Slayers.
Right.
Or sometimes
Unpainted
Stormcast.
fire slayers are the hardest army to understand of all time.
Sure.
As much as I'm excited about Giants, and I am excited for a hopeful change, please, 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 please have ogres go in a direction
Yes.
that makes them like I always thought Beast Claw Raiders are fine, and I think they're hard to mess up.
Right.
Other than they should just make the Huskards priests. Like I think
Right.
all of a sudden
And then make the
they're fine.
priests a little bit better.
And maybe make the Mournfang a little bit hittier.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Give them a pip rend extra on top of what they got now. They're fine.
but please, please, please make my gluttons and everything about the former
The foot ogres.
the foot ogres better. Just they're fine. I think you can win with them. There's things to do.
Yeah.
But
Again, it's a missive theme, right? Ogre gluttons
have no
are
rend.
they've got no rend. So what are they? They're a block of wounds that sits on an objective.
Yeah.
And that's not what you're a destruction player. You want to smash, right? Iron Jaws is the ultimate in destruction factions, and ogres is as far from it as you can get.
And there are block wounds that die fast now.
Oh yeah,
Die real fast because things are better in general on offense
Mhm.
and bounty hunters and whatever.
Yeah.
Just please make them give them something maybe they become the magical destruction army where all of a sudden butchers.
well, I think the magical destruction army always has to be Gits. I think you can't take that away from Gits.
I mean, Gits are
Nobody
they're
remembers.
coming out right after Lumineth, so
Sure.
which is sometime in
Yeah.
2024.
But I think you could make them very elite.
Keep adding it.
I think you could treat the ogres like every ogre should be at least as good as a Stormcast foot hero in combat. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask.
I think
They'd have to be expensive, but I think that's okay.
their charged stuff has been cool, and I liked the whole eating or hungry
Right.
mechanic. That was good, and then Mightier makes Rightier was good initially. Now it's been watered down because a lot of other factions can now access that. But
Their charge rules though were fantastic for Beast Claw.
yeah,
They were better for the foot ogres previously, but now it's very difficult to run a unit big enough
I know
of foot
it's-
ogres to get the
Well,
good
that's-
ogre charge.
That's one thing I never understood how they thought making gluttons have to be more made them better.
Right.
Well, I'm really fingers crossed. I've been telling people I think there's a lot of all the books. I think there's the most doom and gloom about the ogres book.
Sure.
You don't think it's gonna be great.
Oh, I think it could be.
But what's your gut instinct on that?
I think they will probably. I think they will almost not change the Beast Claw Raiders.
Which is fine because they're fine.
Right, they're in an okay place. I think they'll leave them very much as they are right now, and I think that they will probably fundamentally miss with the foot ogres, and they will try to make them too cheap. Right, they'll try to make them too inexpensive in terms of points, and in so doing, make them too ineffective on the table.
Buff those frost sabers.
Well,
and
that's the problem right now is that
Dakota's negative about the book. He's got ogres. He doesn't think it's gonna get. I think it's gonna be the strongest destruction book on release.
ooh.
Yes.
Ooh,
Yep.
stronger than current Iron Jaws was in their
Yes.
in their
It's
release.
gonna be ogre 2023.
Are you just doing that to
I like
be
it. I like it.
contrary or playing devil's
I-
advocate?
I think that if you're gonna make a new ogres book and you don't fundamentally fix the same issues that have been with ogres since AOS released,
Mhm.
you're doing something wrong. And every book in third edition has been good. I think the most skeptical one has been Tzeentch, but we haven't even seen anything about Tzeentch yet. So
I think Tzeentch, if they didn't change much to a faction that was decent or good, it's not going to be horrible, right?
And I think IDK, everybody thought me thought was going to be amazing, and now they've proved to be too elite and too fragile to be really competitive. But they're still like have the bones of a good book.
They're still strong.
They're not.
I think one of the themes that I'd love to see them really lean on in
51.
They're fine.
Yeah, perfect.
in ogres, specifically for the foot ogres, one of the things I think if they really did it right, could bring an interesting element to the book, would be to make them the mercenary faction again. That has been their role in the past. That was their role in Warhammer Fantasy. If they became a universal ally, and then really had a diverse set of war scrolls to make that a meaningful thing, and relatively elite, relatively expensive, I think that could be a great place for them to live. I think they're probably going to miss that mark. I don't think they're going to do the mercenary thing, but I think they're also going to miss on the relatively elite and diverse set of war scrolls.
I think we're going to get the book in October.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be out before Lumina.
You think so?
Certainly seems like it.
I do. I think because just of how much news we've already gotten released on giants and ogres.
Yeah, don't tell me.
Well, I think Lumineth will come out before ogres, but I think because of the disruption to the cycle, I think we'll have a very quick succession for these few weeks.
Like announced
We
for
could use it though.
pre-release.
It's been a little slow.
It has been.
I'm expecting pre-release announcement for Lumineth. Pre-release announcement for giants and ogres the same week that Lumineth goes for pre-order, and then Lumineth releases giants and Maw Tribes goes for pre-order.
I think we'll see at least 2 week gap.
You think so?
Yeah.
The one thing I think you can be excited about is it's pretty clear that there's going to be a new Lumineth model. A big model, right? Because there's one hiding behind that.
Not in this book.
Oh, that's not going to be in this book?
I think we've already seen table of contents.
Oh, we have?
We have not.
We have
seen
not?
Table.
Okay, then maybe it's out.
I think it's coming.
Sure.
Well,
and that could be the reason delayed. Maybe it's
somebody also took a picture of the back side of that piece of terrain, and it's got some weird stuff on it.
But there was also, Games Workshop hinted at
someone shy or something like that.
Yeah. So who knows?
Right.
My thing is that. Okay, so Nova. When was Nova? It was
not that long ago.
Recently.
3 weeks ago.
So they moved Lumineth and Tzeentch into summer for the Nova. Hey, here's our thing.
Which is really, it's not summer anymore.
No, summer was ending when it had a month left. All right.
On the hardcore calendar, it had like a month left.
Yeah.
Well, summer ended the middle of last week.
Yes.
So they just moved it into summer and then immediately missed that.
Yeah, it was a very strange thing. But when you look at that timeline, it's easy to say, yeah, they're in summer, but they're kind of spanning off to the side where it could be spring.
I don't want to be your kid where you're like, I'll get you that in summer.
Yeah,
I'll get you that. Let's go home. I thought you were going to give me that. Well, I'll get you it one day.
No, I mean,
today.
with my kids, I don't make promises.
So
they're used to not getting things.
The thing is, if you're going to be transparent, just be transparent and say, hey, this is the reason we got to delay. No one's going to care.
Right.
But be transparent. Who cares? Like, you've already been transparent about the timing. Hey, we're not going to get it out. It's coming in 2 weeks. Or maybe they don't want to say again in case there's another delay.
I just
fine, but just say what we're a little
Tell
delayed.
us why it was delayed. There's no reason not to.
And the thing that I wanted the most was like, so you at noon on whatever Sunday when they're gonna say, hey, here's what's coming for pre-order, and it's the Tzeentch book, you're like, oh, Lumineth's coming out,
right?
And then at the very bottom of that article it says Lumineth's not coming out right now. Not in that wording, but like,
but I mean, it was kind of that wording, like, oh, they're the magic working on some or something
and
like that.
I just want my book.
Well, you haven't gotten any, so you
it's
deserve
3
one.
books in 3 years.
We went out of our way to praise Games Workshop for the timeline. We thought that it was a massively good change, that they were being transparent about what was coming so that we could start to look ahead, start to plan ahead, think about what armies we wanted to invest in ultimately in the future. So every bit of praise that we gave them for that timing, you have to have the same accountability for, well, yes, the timeline changed. We get it. Everybody's timeline changes right now.
Yep.
But show us the same transparency that you showed us with the timeline. Tell us
The Queen did
that
die.
changed.
And not joking about that.
Right.
That affects our neighbors.
It certainly affects the timing of what everyone's doing there. And the shipping and logistics of the world are different than they've ever been. But let us know what's going
Just say it.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, it just sucks because now they sit in this weird spot where they have battle box rules and book rules.
That is a
and-
horrible spot to be because those battle box rules and points for Tzeentch had almost no correlation with what ended up happening.
Well, and I always hate when. So, do you use battle box rules at a tournament?
Yeah, you have to.
Potentially,
Yeah, the
depending
legal
on
ones.
what the TO always says or whatever. Because some people say battle box rules aren't.
Rules is written
Aren't
though, says
rules.
you should use the latest
Yes.
rules.
Right.
But then also, if you decide to use those rules and those points, everything works out in the app or in War Scroll Builder. But if you're like, hey, battle box rules don't work, well then your
Doing
list building
manual
apps
list
don't
building,
work.
it's
yeah.
Frankenstein.
And then you got to find whatever the most recent points were for that, which isn't the hardest thing to do, but
It's certainly a layer of annoyance that no one wants to do.
Inconvenient.
So, anyway,
Lumineth is going for pre-order this weekend.
I can see it.
Announced.
I can
this-
see it.
it could happen.
The rumor was it's announced this weekend, but
Good.
haven't heard anything. The rumor
You
was
maybe
last
have.
weekend and the weekend before.
Yeah.
By the time you're viewing this, maybe you have.
And all this kvetching you can just skip over.
Right.
No, it's still important to me.
What else we got?
That was.
I think that's it. I think we
Yeah,
just
King
have
Bride.
thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, another successful week. We pulled it off again.
We did it.
Yeah.
We did it. We fooled them again.
Right.
Do you guys want to film another one after Dragonfall?
Yes,
We'll see.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll do battle
Well,
reports then.
I'm going to say after Dragonfall, we're going to have the balance update to talk
Mhm.
about. We'll have giants, ogres,
And that's it.
That's it.
Right.
So we'll have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking about all our games. We continue to have battle reports. We try to do a video every week. So we appreciate everybody joining us in these conversations.
Join us on Discord.
Yep, absolutely.
Where's it found?
Right down here.
Yeah, right down below. And if you like what we're doing, shoot us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. We're happy to have you, and we just appreciate you hanging out with us.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Thank you.
Later.